Also in verse 3, he calls the word the way again. We've already covered that one. His fourth synonym, he calls his Bible precepts. He calls his Bible statutes. And he calls his word commandments. And what he says is this: the people who walk in his ways do no iniquity. Does that mean they don't sin? No, we're all painfully aware we're all sinners. But if you follow his way, you don't intentionally go on a path that's not his way. That's what he's saying. Those who walk in his ways don't intentionally follow the wrong path. Verse 4, you have commanded us, keep your precepts diligently. What's a precept? It's God's directions for life. That's what a precept is. It's God giving directions. I'll never forget this. In my first Christmas with our firstborn son, Johnny, his grandpa in New York mailed him a tricycle in a box to us in California. And we were living out there in California, and it came to our door, and I took a knife, opened it, dumped the whole thing out, spread it out on the floor. A little pamphlet was over there. Bonnie said, aren't you going to read the directions? I said, what do you need to read the directions for? It's a tricycle. So I put it all together. And the last piece were these two locks. And it says, take a hammer. It says, make sure it's assembled correctly. And go on both sides of the big front wheel. And that locked the whole thing together. So I did. And then Bonnie said, what's that piece? It was under the couch. I said, I don't know. She said, well, what does the directions say that's for? I said, I didn't read the directions, And I said, don't worry about it. And so we put it under the tree, and my little toddler son came out, and for the next 3 years, when he rode his tricycle, it went like this. I had left out this stabilizer thing that kept everything, the three wheels all balanced, and it was going this way, and so every pedal, it was just like an exercise machine. And he loved it. He would just go like this. It wore him out. He was ADDHH and all that anyway, so it helped him. And when he would ride other people's tricycles, he'd say, what's wrong with your tricycle? Did you know a lot of people dump their life out, put it together the way they think, and they're going like this, and they think that's the way life is supposed to be. Because they're not following your precepts diligently, God's directions for how life is supposed to be put together and work. And God said that only comes from my word. And if you say, I don't need those directions, be not deceived, God's not mocked. Whatever you sow, you'll reap a very disjointed life. Because God says, you don't follow directions, there are consequences. And oh, that my ways were directed to keep your statutes. That's God's plan. God has a plan. That's why Paul, at the end of his life, says, I've finished the course. I know what your plan is. I did what you called me to do. That's why David says, I fulfilled your purpose in my generation. I knew your plan, and every day I said, I want your will done in my life. I want to follow your plan. God says, through Ezra every time would say, oh, direct my ways. I want your plans for my life, not my own. Then I would not be ashamed when I look into all your commandments. Those are God's absolutes. Paul talks about that too. He says, I don't want to be ashamed at Christ's coming. The Apostle John says, he actually said, let me not be ashamed at your coming in 1 John. What was he talking about? He's talking about that moment when we see Jesus face to face. We can say, I listened to what your absolutes are, and as much as possible by your grace, I responded to you. Yes, I failed, and I've confessed and forsaken that, but with my whole heart I've sought you. Then I won't be ashamed. What's going to be awful is standing at the judgment seat of Christ and seeing everything we live for, all of our collections and our gizmos and all of our pinning and posting and poking and snapping and chatting and twitting and everything else burn up. And that's when we suffer loss, and the Lord wipes away tears. David said, I don't want that.